So you've fallen for an avoidant and you want to know how to play your cards best. Or you really like this guy and you find out that he has an avoidant attachment style and you're like, I don't know if this is worth my time. I don't know if I'm wasting my time. I don't know if he even likes me. Why is he pulling away? I don't know what to do here. Guys, I got you. As someone who has fallen more so on the anxious attachment side in the past, I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards secure now. But as someone who was severely anxious at one point in my life, I can relate. I have attracted all of the avoidant men in my life. And you have to understand how to deal with these types of people. Otherwise, it's definitely not going to be worth your time. But I will say, obviously, there are things that you need in a relationship, which we're going to touch upon. So let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Way Too Wifey. I'm your host, respectfully Gabby, and in this podcast we talk all things dating and relationships in this modern day. And if you are new here, hi, I'm Gabby. I'm an online dating coach where I help you transform your confidence to live your best lives inside and outside of relationships. You guys, it all starts from within. If you feel chaos from within, and maybe you don't even know that it's like this bad, but I can tell you right now, on the outside, if every person that you're running into has the same issues and you're running into the same guy with a different face and you're like, what is happening? Like, I'm fine, but like, what's happening with them? Guys, there's something internally you're not looking at, and that's exactly what we do, what we focus on in the 8-week transformation program. So please, if you're interested, hit the stand link in my bio, book a discovery call with me, and we'll go over all of the pieces in order for you to date better, to attract better, to feel better. We today are talking about I kind of wanted to get more information on this before like actually making a full podcast episode about it, because there's so much that goes into anxious or like just attachment styles in general. And I'm not claiming to be the biggest expert on attachment styles, but I do know enough to make a full podcast episode on it. I do know enough to like spot an anxious, an avoidant, a fearful avoidant, whatever, a secure person. I know enough to say that's what that's looking like, and this is probably where it's stemming from. But today we're talking about specifically the avoidant attachment style, because this one is so interesting, and I think they get such a bad rep because people that date them are like, don't waste your time. Absolutely not. Just keep it moving. They're gonna give you a headache. And I fucking understand that. Okay, I really do. But I also will say that doesn't mean they're bad people. And I think there is definitely a difference between being emotionally unavailable and not really looking for anything, not really like wanting to settle down, emotionally immature to in that realm. And then there's someone who actually does want a relationship, who just has an insecure attachment style, and how they go about navigating those interpersonal relationships is a little bit different than how an anxious would go about dealing with a relationship, or how a secure person would go about dealing with a relationship. So I would probably say that most of my audience is probably gearing towards the anxious attachment style. What does it all mean? Let's maybe break it down. Let's give a little brief overview. So an anxious attachment style, which I feel like a lot of my audiences, I think a lot of women kind of geared towards anxious attachment style. Basically, when you were younger, you had some form of parenting that was inconsistent. So how did that respond for you internally? Basically, you have this core abandonment wound that now plays out in your relationships. And anytime and it doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship. It could be a friendship where you're like, oh my God, why did they say that thing about me? Did they mean to say it that way? Like, if you take and dissect every little bit of every little piece, someone says, someone does, and you're like, it's a personal attack against me. They're going to leave me. I'm scared. And then you start to have all of these anxieties form when you are making relationships with people. That is an anxious attachment style. Whereas an avoidant attachment style, basically the complete opposite. This person was given some form of inconsistency while they were growing up. they learn this behavior of, it is not safe for me to express my emotions. It's not safe for me to open up about things. In fact, the way that I'm dealing with this is to draw back my energy, to think that I am the only person that has my back. I can't trust that anyone else out there has my best interest at heart, that anyone else out there is going to hurt me. And it feels suffocating being in relationships with people and trying to trust them and trying to open up to them and trying to communicate with them is not a natural thing. But I can say that, okay, and obviously a secure is someone who is just like very secure in relationships. They feel self-assured. They don't need someone else to self-assure them. Relationships aren't as much of a trigger for them. You can move from an anxious or an avoidant attachment style into a secure attachment style by doing the work on yourself. And we do a lot of this within my coaching. Doing the work is really going to bring you towards a secure attachment style. And maybe you're not 1000% secure. Is anyone 1000% secure? I'm not really sure. I think there's some things that are going to trigger you, and maybe it's not like on a daily basis, or maybe it's not the norm for you, but there may be some things that come up that are like that probe a response or a trigger. But anyway, we're going to get into the avoidant attachment style, because here's the thing. When you're coming into a relationship, you're expecting your needs to get met in that relationship. And I think a lot of times when they don't get met, you get responsive and reactive, and how you respond and try to communicate with that person when you're coming at it from different angles. You're an anxious, you're going to go about it and be like, I'm not feeling understood. I'm not feeling seen. They're not understanding my needs. And both of you guys are going to respond in different ways that is going to draw the relationship so much further. And I can say from all of the avoidance that I've attracted, and I think sometimes I do fall into a little bit of an avoidance side, but that their biggest fear is losing their freedom, are the types of people that like maybe a little bit of a commitment phobe. Maybe they do want a relationship, but like want to be able to like commit to the right person, or I want to make sure that this is right for me, and it takes them a little bit longer. They feel like if they do commit to someone that they're going to lose their freedom. Their core wound is their loss of freedom, whereas an anxious is the complete opposite. They don't want their freedom. They want to be a little bit more in a codependent relationship, or just in a relationship that they have some kind of consistency and feel safe in. Whereas the core wound for an anxious attachment style is an abandonment wound. They think that everyone's going to leave them, and then they get very anxious when they feel someone drawing back. So how do they respond? Typically is that they will cling on a little bit more and like, oh my God, no, hey, I want to over communicate, want to oversee this person, want to suffocate the relationship, whereas the other person just wants their space. A lot of times they're like, why can't he just communicate with me? If he wanted to, he would. Why can't he just communicate with me? It's not that hard. It's not that hard for you, but he's coming at it from a completely different background. That's like saying to you, hey, stop being anxious. You can't stop doing that, right? You have to put in the work in order for you to get to a good place internally. For when someone does something, it's not as much of a trigger for you. I think in the beginning, it's really hard to tell if someone is an anxious or an avoidant, because there's no attachment there. You don't actually really know this person. You're just going on a couple dates with them. You're just getting to know them. It's very fresh. It's very new. But once the feelings start to get involved, that's when things are triggered. And you're like, oh my God, as an anxious, you're probably like, why are they pulling away? Something's off, something happened. I can sense it. I can feel it. And something's going wrong. And this is where I start to panic. And I'm in this spiral of making ideas in my head of what's going on. And what did I do? I can fix the problem by showing that I care a little bit more and being a little bit more open with them and trying to like pour all of your energy into this person in order to fix it. When in actuality, you're really just drawing the other person away. And the avoidant, after the first couple of days, there's no attachment, whatever. Once things start to become a little bit more serious, this is when they're like, I need my space. This feels suffocating. I'm going to lose my control. I'm going to lose my freedom. And this feels very suffocating. Let me take a step back. And it's not anything against you. It's nothing against you, actually. But it's like they need the time and space to process what's going on internally in order for them to come back to it. So how you respond in this moment when things start to get a little bit more serious is going to absolutely be key and crucial of like, do you actually want this to work? And I will say, as a preface to this, the only relationships that are going to work are when both parties are equally invested in working towards commitment. Okay? Because I think a lot of people are like, well, yeah, he's avoidant, but then he's also emotionally immature, emotionally unavailable, and doesn't really want me. That's a completely different story than someone who just like is a little scared to commit. It's fine. I think a lot of men out there are a little bit scared to commit nowadays. The dating pool is significantly made up of anxious and avoidant attachment styles. Most of the secure people, let's be honest, are in relationships, are in long-term relationships because they figured out the relationship thing. And there's no bad way. It's just different. It's all just different. It's how we go about life, how we view relationships. I will say it doesn't necessarily mean that the avoidant is a bad person. It doesn't mean the anxious is a bad person. It doesn't mean the secure person is a good person. It's just how we view relationships. And I think because this person tends to draw back their energy and doesn't know how to effectively communicate with you, they're deemed as a bad person when in actuality they just don't know how to. Here's when, if he wanted to, he would, is not applicable because he is handling things the best that he knows how to, or she, whatever, use it whatever way you need to. But this person is dealing with it the way that they know how to deal with it. It's not because they want to hurt you. It's not necessarily because they don't want to communicate. It's just, they genuinely don't know how to, and it feels overbearing. It feels suffocating. They may not even understand their own needs, and I think that's the biggest problem, is that a lot of people don't understand what they need in certain situations. And how can you ask for what you need if you don't actually know what you need? You don't know how you feel. You don't know what's going on internally because you don't want to look at what's going on internally. That is why it's so important to do the work. That's my preface, is that both parties have to be committed to wanting a relationship, but how can you play your cards right? How to have this situation work in your favor, and like when to know is it even worth pursuing? Because I think when you look at it, you have to be able to assess if this person does not want a relationship at all, and you've like talked that out in the beginning, then maybe you're wasting your time if you do want a relationship. If this person is just a little bit scared, there's ways to go about this to make it work in your favor. Just gearing off the point where communication is such a big thing, I think how we are communicating too is equally as important. If you're coming at a situation by saying, you made me feel like shit when you pulled away. Why did you pull away? I mean, use this in any context, but why are you withdrawing your energy? Coming at it from an attacking lens, they're going to feel defensive and want to pull away from you even more. They're going to feel suffocated and like they need to get out of the relationship as soon as possible. Whereas if you're saying how you feel, hey, when you pull away, it makes me feel like you don't want to be with me. When you're saying it in this way, it's a cause and effect. You did this. We're stating the obvious that this thing happened, right? And that's actually what happened. This isn't, why did you do that? It's, you actually did that, and I'm acknowledging that you did this thing. And this is how I felt because of it. And when you put it like that, it's a little bit easier to digest, and it doesn't come across as an attack. And if this person does feel like this is an attack on them, probably very emotionally immature. But if you're saying, hey, when you're pulling away like this, it does make me feel like you don't want a relationship with me, or you don't want the same things as me. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page here. It might be a lot for them to handle depending on how avoidant they are. This person doesn't know how to communicate back to you like, that's not the case, whatever. And they're completely dismissive, completely ghosting you. take that as a sign to move on, and take that as a sign that you might be wasting your time. Because if they can't say, that's not the case, I'm so sorry, give them their space, give them the time they need. That is the most important thing I think that you can take away from this, is to allow them the safe space to explore their own space. Because when you come at a situation from an attacking kind of, why did you do that? I'm not feeling good about this. I want you to, whatever message that you think about sending this person, take a step out of your emotions for 1 second. Reread your message and think to yourself, if someone sent me this message, how would I respond to this? How would I receive this message? And if I might feel a little defensive. Be real with yourself here. I might feel a little defensive if I got this message. Reword it, rework it into a way that's actually going to be effective in communicating. But that's number one, is being able to communicate effectively, because when you go about it the wrong way, someone is going to withdraw their energy even more if they are an avoidant. Whereas I think maybe if you were a little bit more secure, person would just be like, okay, I understand like where you're coming from. And it might be a little annoying to like receive feedback that way, but at least they would be able to work with you a little bit more. So moving on to number 2, an anxious attachment style wants to move very quickly. Okay, so in relationships, you want to get to a place where you feel secure and safe, and it's actually consistent. It's an actual relationship, something that you're working towards. You want to get to the place where you feel safe. Whereas an avoidant wants to take their time. When you're approaching a relationship and you want to rush into it and you're like, we're dating now, we're serious, this is something serious, that other person's going to be like, I haven't had time to even think or process. I don't know what's going on. I thought we were just dating. I'm still like getting to know you. I want to take my time with this. Give that person their time and space away from you to think, to have that time and space to actually miss you, to want to pursue things even further. And the thing is, when you are giving them their space, you can't take that personally. This is something that person actually needs in order to feel closer to you. Whereas you operate in the sense of, I need to be with this person at all times in order to feel closer. Understand that it's okay and it is healthy to give a little bit of space in relationships. And when you don't, you are going to suffocate the relationship, and it is going to burn up in flames at the end of the day. You can't be in a relationship where you are 24/7 in each other's presence, in each other's essence, texting, calling, FaceTiming, being with them at all hours of the day. It's just not healthy. Okay, and the more that you cling on to this codependent relationship, it becomes really hard for you to process things on your own. If you are not okay with moving slowly and you're like, no, I have to get to the next phase, it really is so important for you to heal those parts of yourself, because any relationship that you get into, you're going to rush into it, get into the wrong relationships because you want that commitment, you want that closeness, and then only to realize that was never your person, and then it usually, more often than not, ends quicker than it actually starts. So the quicker that you rush into it, the less information you actually know about what you're getting yourself into. So start asking yourself the questions, is this person good for my life? Are they going to fit into my life? Because the more people pleasing and like, I have to like jump into something secure so I feel secure, it's just going to backfire on you in the long run. Moving on to the next point, validating their feelings. I get that you probably are feeling very different things than this person, and the way that you think about things is not the way that they think about things, and you have to understand that. And whenever they come to you, because it is really hard for an avoidant person to open up and express their feelings. So anytime this person comes to you and they're like, hey, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. If they open up about anything, you have to let them know that this is a safe space. We're good. Like, thank you for coming to me. And I'm acknowledging that I understand where you're coming from. And I acknowledge that and validate your feelings to be real. Because if someone is feeling something, you can't argue with that. If someone feels some type of way, you can't argue about how someone feels. That is just how they feel. Like, you can't say, hey, you can't feel that way. It's just, you have to understand that they're going to feel different things than you probably are. Validating them in those moments is going to set you apart, because they're not used to a lot of people understanding them. They're not used to being able to trust other people and being able to open up to other people. So once you give them that safe space, slowly they're going to trust that this is okay. When you are giving them the space, I think it's important, just kind of touching back on this point, but when you are giving them the space that they need, just know there's ways that you can communicate this. Like, hey, I understand that you need your space, and that's fine. I want you to have your space, but how about we plan something for X date? How about we do this on whatever time frame that works best for both of you? What does your schedule look like for next week? I'd love to get together. I understand that you are probably busy. Just giving them that grace and that understanding is going to make them feel so much more at ease, as opposed to, why couldn't you hang out with me today? Why are you always so busy? And like coming at it like, well, I need your time, attention, and affection at all times, because that is going to suffocate the relationship, and they are going to run for the hills. They don't want any type of relationship that is going to suffocate them. So understanding and being okay with giving them their space when they need it. And because here's the thing. You could like be in the same house as someone and like in the same room as someone, and as an anxious attachment style, you're probably like, we weren't really spending time together because we weren't like bonding and being close. Whereas an avoidant would be like, that is a lot of time that we spent together. We spent all day together, and you're like, no, we haven't spent any time together. And they're like, what do you mean? We've spent the entire day together. You're coming at it from completely different worlds, and understand that maybe give them their time and space on their own completely. And then when you do come together, make it meaningful, make it valuable, to where you're both getting what you need out of this, because you don't need every single second from this person. Be honest with yourself. You have your own life. And that brings me into the next point. Have your own life outside of this person, because the more that you are dependent, the more that you want this person to fulfill all your needs, this is going to drive them so far away to where they're like, I can't deal with this. I can't be your savior. I can barely even figure out myself. Okay. If you were to just be like, hey, like going out with my friends today, or hey, going to hang out with my family today, going to do this, going to my hobby, going to gym, Pilates, whatever you do, and giving them their own time, they're going to appreciate that space so much more, and they're going to appreciate you so much more. They're going to be like, wow, I can come back, and I know that space isn't going to drive us away, whereas it's only going to make us stronger. And I think as an anxious, it's so hard to give someone their space and time. You want to be in their presence, but understand that if you want to get close with this person, you have to kind of play by their rules in some senses. Okay. And I'm not saying don't get your needs met. I'm not saying days, months, weeks without talking to this person and giving them their space, but I am saying give them a little bit of time, because they need some time to process things. And I think the more time and grace that you give them, the more they're like, wait, come back. I actually don't mind this. This is safe for me. I feel good when I am with you. And don't give them a hard time about it, because the more that you're like, haven't seen me in days, why are you never see me, you never want to talk to me, the more nitpicky you are, the more they're gonna feel like incompetent in the relationship, and they're going to want to leave it, and they feel like they've had enough. So basically what I'm saying is, you can communicate your needs and your wants, but first and foremost, you have to understand what your needs and wants are. And are they coming from a place of, I'm very unhealed and I need every second of every day with this person? Or are they coming from a place with, I expect to see someone at least however many times a week, and that would be my standard. And it's not coming from a place of neediness, but it's coming from a place of, I need this in order to feel good in the relationship. And in a healthy aspect. Like, what is that healthy balance, that healthy medium of what you actually want, understanding your own needs first in order to effectively communicate those to a partner. I think that doing the work and understanding, I think the biggest part of this is really just doing the work, understand what you need from someone, and then don't accept anything less. If that person doesn't want the same things, if they're going about life and you guys are so far on different pages, maybe it's not going to work out. But if you're like, I'm willing to bend a little bit on certain things, if both of you are working towards the relationship, but they just go about it in a little bit different of a way, hey, this person's not a bad person. Just understand that you guys go about this in different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be a make it or break it in a relationship, but the more you are understanding of what that other person needs and you're both working towards the same things, why can it not work? Like, you both want the same things. You both are invested in this. Yes, you come from different worlds, and that's fine. It's all about what the want is behind, because if they're not putting in any effort and they can't do it and they don't know how to communicate, they don't know anything about anything, and they're like, I can barely fucking work out my own emotions, let alone your own, maybe leave that person where they're at and let them figure it out on their own. But if you're both committing, hopefully these tips helped you a little bit. But that is it for this week's episode. If you could, please leave that 5-star rating, turn on your bell notification so you'll never miss another episode. Leave that 5-star rating. Again, whatever goes around comes around. So if you're leaving love will come back to you. And I will see you all next Tuesday.